Welcome to the Payroll Podcast with your host, Nick Day of JGA Recruitment, Specialist Payroll Recruiters.
Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. My name is Nick Day from James Gray Associates Global Payroll Recruiters. I'm really excited to be joined by a big personality in the payroll industry, someone I've been following on LinkedIn for some time, the curator of some brilliant content on LinkedIn. So if you're not following it, please make sure you do. Go and find him on LinkedIn. This is Jon Schausten.
Yes.
Is that correct?
You did great.
Fantastic. Jon Schausten, CPP, Director of Payroll and HRIS for OneAmerica. Jon is a bit of a legend in the American Payroll Association, I think it's fair to say. But rather than me give you a bio, Jon, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little about your background.
Sure. I've been in payroll for 21 years this year. So I started off as a small payroll company, left there, went to work for a restaurant chain in Indianapolis, Steak and Shake, worked there for 7 years. Worked for a cosmetic company doing payroll in Indiana. Started my first bit into global payroll. Did Canada, Australia, and the UK. And then I moved on to a company called Vertellis. I was there for 9 years and just left 3 weeks ago and started at OneAmerica. So I'm really involved at a local level at the American Payroll Association in Indianapolis. So I'm the president of the local chapter. I help teach our study group for CPP. And then I'm also involved at the national APA. I speak. Just rolling off as a board of advisors to the president. So yeah, trying to stay involved and really love my payroll career. So.
21 years. Good man, that's quite impressive. And you mentioned global payroll. Obviously, I'm sat here in the global pavilion of the American Payroll Association Congress, or the exhibition hall. You mentioned UK payroll as well.
Yes.
And you're a national payroll expert. Now, for those not familiar, I've learned whilst I've been here that things, states such as Pennsylvania have like 2,600 different tax rules and changes. And there's a lot to learn just in state payroll, let alone global.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about your journey into global payroll and some of the challenges you've been faced, but also how you overcame them and what you love about global payroll.
Yeah, I started off in global payroll, I think like anybody in payroll, is by accident.
Sure.
So I started off, I was at a job at Arbonne. They said, hey, we're opening up an office in Canada. Do you think you could do the payroll? Sure, why not? And I think that's the best thing you can do in your payroll career is to say yes. Don't say no, say yes.
Sure.
You can figure it out. So I started off doing payroll in Ottawa, Saskatchewan, and Quebec. So Quebec is, I used to think, the most challenging place I've ever dealt with, and then I got into Europe. Implemented those payrolls, ran it. It was great. Really enjoyed it. Then I went to a company, Vertellis. I got involved a little bit in China payroll. We had payroll I helped out with comp. Indian payroll. When I first started there, they had a problem with the provincial fund, and I'm sitting there talking with the accountant from India. I'm like, this is a provident fund for the UK, and everybody in the meeting's just looking at me, and the two of us are just talking and having our own conversation, and we're like, well, we're just going to leave. You two have got this figured out. Then we had a problem with our German payroll provider was going out of business, so I ended up leading the project to replace that. Our UK payroll provider had gone out of business, replaced that payroll system twice now. Twice I had to do that, and then I got involved with the Netherlands and Belgium as well. So I would never say Quebec is terrible because I've done Belgian payroll.
Okay, fair enough. I like that. I also heard from Kira and Max earlier saying China's not particularly easy either.
No, China is really difficult, and the thing that's really challenging about that is they want someone in China. They want someone to speak Chinese. And so my involvement was limited to the fact that I was helping them with compensation more so than doing the payroll process. But one of my projects before I left my last job was to find them a payroll system that could do what they needed. They were doing everything by hand still.
Sure.
And they had a process that worked for them to remit taxes. But the challenge was they spent so much time doing a monthly payroll because they did everything by hand.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of great companies out there that could have really broadened their horizons, and that would have been one of my top projects before I left.
So one of the things I've heard since I've been here is apparently the UK really isn't that challenging compared to some of the others you've come to face. So
UK is great. I love UK payroll. It's straightforward. You've got your taxes, you've got completing to the pension scheme. It's great. So it's cut and dry. So I think the UK is wonderful. But to me, the funniest thing about doing like English-speaking countries, Canada and the UK are really similar.
Okay.
But Australia is more like the US, and I thought that was kind of amazing to me. But there's a lot of commonality. So the one thing I found in every country where you do payroll, you make this much, the government's going to take a big chunk of it,
Sure.
and then you bring a little bit home.
Yeah, mostly for...
Yes, every country has their taxes, and you're going to pay them. So as long as you realize that, it's really great. But Australian, by far, the most laid-back people I've had. I used to do payroll at home on Sunday nights because it was noon the next day there. and we'd have problems getting paperwork in, for a pay increase, and I'd call up like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't get your pay in. They're like, no worries, Joan, just throw it on the next pay. We don't care.
Okay.
I'm like, so they're real laid back, where if I did that in the U.S., somebody would be trying to hunt me down and kill me. So
I think one of the qualities of a true payroller came out there, John, where you're working on a Sunday. I think this will resonate with a lot of the people listening to this podcast, working all the hours of the day to get the payroll out.
Yeah, and Max really puts it well with a passion for payroll. You have to care about what you do because it's a thankless job. Nobody ever calls you and says, hey, John, thanks for my paycheck. And so I think you realize that the more anonymous that you are at your job, the better you're doing. So my last boss was always surprised when I'd been at the company for a while, and someone comes up and be like, oh, I've never met John before. And she'd be like, I can't believe that you've never met them. I'm like, it's because I'm doing my job. They don't have a complaint.
Sure.
So it's an expense for a company. It's usually the largest expense. So people want to get paid on time. They want to get paid accurately. If you do both of those things well, you're going to be successful no matter what country it is.
Beautifully put. I have to say, the employees might not say well done, but here at the Payroll Podcast, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to raise their profile and say, well done, John, great job. And as you can probably tell, John is quite an energetic and engaging speaker, and as a result, the APA always get him involved in the talks over here as well. And you've been delivering a talk on something that's not that familiar with us in the UK, which is about chapters and networking, right?
Yeah,
and a lot of the payrolls in America have sort of chapters. Well, I'll let you explain what a chapter is, and maybe the UK can take some advice and set up our own. But
yeah, I think it's a great idea. So you guys have the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals.
Sure.
We have the American Payroll Association. So at a high level, that's the overarching for the national. But what they have underneath that is groups or networks of people, like in my case, Indianapolis. We have a payroll chapter for just people in Indianapolis. Now, we're chartered by the National Payroll Association, so we follow rules and stuff like and processes and procedures to make sure that we're aligned with the national APA, but it's on a smaller scale. So there's about anywhere between 25 to 50 of us in a meeting. We usually do it once a month. We get together and we network and we talk to each other, and we deal with issues that are pertinent to us, particularly, in the United States, when Pennsylvania changed their tax code, great point
Again,
about that.
yeah.
We went through some things like that. Indiana laws are changing. I just had a speaker from the state of Indiana come speak at our local chapter because they're changing the way they did the electronic remittance of taxes. So they changed the process. We had them come in and speak. So the local chapter is a great way. I think of it as kind of the foundation of what the national APA is built on. So you get people involved at a local level, they want to get involved at a national level. That's how it started for me. I got involved with my local chapter, and I got really involved at a national level. But it's really good to network with people. The first time I was president of our chapter, I was trying to grow our membership.
Sure.
So I went on LinkedIn, and I took all my connections, and I looked at them, and I was like, okay, there's got to be more people in Indiana or Indianapolis doing payroll. So I turned off first connections. I typed in payroll in Indianapolis, and all the second and third connections came up. And I just sent a note saying, hey, we haven't met. My name's Jon Schausten. I'm the president of the local chapter of the APA. I'd love to connect with you and let you know more about our chapter. Not a single person told me no. Every person I sent an invitation to connected with me. So it's a great way to kind of grow your chapters, use social networking, and be involved. So things like this and things that you do, but the local chapter is kind of creates the groundswell, I think, for people's excitement with payroll, and it was a really great avenue for me to start down my career and being involved with the national APA.
Fantastic. It's clearly you're very proactive, which you need to be in payroll, right? And then networking is really important. I don't think we do it enough in the payroll industry.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of payroll people like to keep their heads down and stay in their box, stay in their lane.
That's right.
Don't challenge anything, and I think it's fun to see people like an event like this or things that you're doing where people kind of come out of their shell. And I think it's great because payroll has so much to offer. All the metrics for people, how much money we spend. There's a lot of data in payroll, and I think it can really help a company and help the industry, your industry, learn more about the people that work for you and what you do and how to get things done. So.
Fantastic. And obviously I'm always going to be pushing the power of networking. Being a recruiter, we've got to do it. We've got over 500,000 people in our payroll network. Yes. So if there are people listening to this that want to get involved and want access to a network to promote a chapter, I'll be more than happy to help, and I'm sure John would as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always available at Jon Schausten on LinkedIn, so I'm glad to help with that. I think anything we can do to help chapters grow and develop and get people to be passionate about payroll. People care about what they do, and you can tell by a conference like this, there's 3,300 people, so payroll is pretty important. So
very important.
I think it's one of those things that, like you said, we're in a time right now, and from your business, there's more payroll jobs than there are payroll people. So where are they going to come from? They're going to have to be grown and developed, or, in my case, I just started a new job 3 weeks ago. Someone came and found me and wants to use my services. So I think there's a lot out there for networking and the things that you do, and the great job that you do with helping promote payroll and recruiting people for payroll. So.
Fantastic. Now, we're going to go to a quick advert break.
Einstein famously said that insanity was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We believe it's time to try a new approach to recruitment. JGA Recruitment specialise in recruiting the top 15% of payroll and HR talent using innovative 24/7 attraction strategies that are proven to improve quality of higher candidate retention and return on investment. De-risk your recruitment process today and hire better talent faster with JGA Recruitment. Visit jgarecruitment.com to find out more.
So, obviously we're in the Global Payroll Pavilion right here, and I would like to just ask you what challenges you're seeing in the global payroll marketplace at the moment. We've had Kira and Max talking about compliance and data, but what other challenges are you seeing in the payroll market at the moment, and what are the things that you're doing to overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge, people don't know what they don't know, and I think people are afraid to ask. And I think people have a reliance on, we found this vendor and it's going to be the magic bullet. They're going to fix all of our payroll issues.
There's no magic bullet.
No, there's no magic bullet. The responsibility starts with you. You're still, no matter what payroll system you use, you're responsible for that payroll. Do the payroll, make sure it's done right, and find a partner that wants to work with you. My success when I started payroll in Australia and Canada and the UK, I didn't know anything about it. I went to, in the UK, I went to Her Majesty's Customs and Revenue site. I learned a lot, but I asked my vendor, I said, listen, this is my responsibility, but I need your help. I will ask a lot of questions. I will need advice, and if I'm doing something wrong, tell me, because I'm going to ask and want to know. I don't think enough people take ownership and accountability, and I don't think people realize it's a marriage, that you have to work with your vendor and make sure you're doing things right, because they're the experts in the field, but you're responsible for your job. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is I think people are too fearful to step up and say, this is mine. I don't know enough about it, but I'm going to ask the questions and figure it out. So I think from being someone in the U.S. and being challenged globally by how could you possibly know how to do payroll in Indianapolis, Indiana for the UK or Australia? Well, you can find out and you can ask for help. And I think the biggest thing people need to realize is you're not on an island. You are in the UK, but, but you need to be able to ask for help and realize your limitations and not be afraid to ask questions and grow. So I think that's the biggest challenge I see for people in the U.S. that are getting involved in global payroll.
Excellent. This brings us back to the power of networking again. Yeah. Interestingly, John wasn't here when I interviewed Max earlier on today on a previous podcast, and the word that Max used and actually gave a really great description was marriage. And you just used the same thing again with your vendor. I think the vendor relationship has changed a lot, and it is much more about a two-way relationship now than it used to be. Yeah. It's just interesting. Within 3 interviews, 2 of you have used the same word of marriage.
Yeah. No, Max and I talk quite a bit, and we've gotten a really great relationship over the last 3 years. We've known each other, and we have a lot of commonality in our thought process. It's your responsibility to own the payroll. It's your responsibility to do it, but work with your vendor and have a great relationship, because the two of you are stuck together. And it's like I said, a marriage, you're not going to always be happy with each other, but at the end of the day, if you guys work together and make things the right way, it's a pretty beautiful thing.
Win-win.
Yeah, it's a win-win for both. You want to be successful and pay your employees, and they want to be successful in business.
So one plug I am going to make, just from your previous response as well, you mentioned Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, or HMRC as we know it. Yeah. For those that are listening from America, you might be interested to know that JJ Recruitment, which is the payroll business, the recruitment company that I represent, we actually placed the payroll manager for the Queen.
Nice. How many people can say that?
Exactly, right? It was quite exciting.
Does that make you royalty by default?
I wish it did. That'd be quite cool. We did get to go to Buckingham Palace. We got to sit in the portrait gallery and have a tour, because we had to know what the offices look like, right?
Well, how can you sell a payroll job without walking a mile in their shoes? So,
exactly. There was no way we could have sold that job without seeing it.
Pick you up in a Bentley and drop you off and have the guards walk you around.
I wish. Although we did see the changing of the guard from the inside of Buckingham Palace. It was very cool.
People can say that. That's pretty impressive. Yeah. So, that's been the big challenge with every time I've implemented a global payroll. It's the first time I tell my wife about it. She's like, when do we get to go? And how quickly do I need to pack my bags? I'm like, I don't understand the we process, but it's amazing. I never have once left the U.S. to set up a global payroll.
Oh, wow.
I've done it all remotely and scheduled meetings, like you said, working at 10 o'clock on a Sunday, or going in late, setting a meeting to talk to somebody. You find ways to make it work, and as big as the world is, it's pretty small. It's easy to network, it's easy to connect to people, it's easy to schedule a meeting or talk on a phone and find resources that you need to do your job. So it's amazing.
100% agree. And it just shows how far technology has come as well.
Exactly.
Now, for those listening, you may be interested or curious to know how you can get to reach the top of the payroll career ladder. Jon is someone who has done that. He's reached the pinnacle of the industry, in my view. He's head of his chapter. He's a very well-known payroll manager. He's not just national, he's global, as we've established. Jon, if you could give one piece of advice to a payroll manager listening to this right now who is ambitious, doesn't really know where to get started. They've been a payroll manager maybe for a small, be it UK or national or global payroll, but they want to take it to the next level. What advice would you give them to help them take that next step?
Take charge of your own career. You're the only person that's going to help yourself. The days of someone's laying a path for you isn't there. I went and got my certified payroll professional designation in the US. I got involved at a local chapter. I got involved at a national level, and I never said no. I think the best thing I can tell people to do is if you get an opportunity to do something, don't say no to it. Try something, not be afraid to go outside your boundaries, and not be afraid to ask questions. The only way that I know that you can learn is by asking questions, being involved, and being inquisitive. So I've done a lot in my career that, I don't know how to do it, but I'll figure it out. So
Sure.
I always say yes. And, I may not have the answer tomorrow, but I'll find it and get there. So technologies nowadays is wonderful enough that you can find the resources or ask somebody for help. I have a great network of people that if there's something specific, and I know that person that does that, I'm going to go pick their brain. And you know what? People always say yes. They want to help you. They want you to be successful, but you have to take ownership. You have to be responsible. The days of somebody planning your career for you, I'm going to start at this job and I'm going to work 40 years, I'm going to retire. Those days don't exist anymore. So you have to be accountable, you have to take ownership and find the resources to be successful.
Absolutely, fantastic advice. I couldn't have put it any better. I think that's brilliant. And I would also say from Jon, he said he always says yes. So I've obviously been following Jon's activities on LinkedIn for some time because he releases great content and he's very active, which I think you probably established for the way that you've built your connections, right?
Yeah.
But also, I met you for the first time at this Congress.
Yes.
I asked him if he'd join me for a podcast. Straight away, there was a yes. We're sat down now doing it live.
Yes.
We haven't planned it. We've got no written questions down. We're just sat having a chat. And, you said yes straight off the bat. And this is a great way for you, hopefully, to raise your profile to those listening this now. And if you are listening and you want to raise your profile, this is just one way you can do it, right? Getting on a podcast or branding yourself. But there's LinkedIn, as you mentioned.
Yes.
And there's just attending a Congress like this
Yes.
where you get to meet so many great people.
Yeah, and I think that's the great thing is the bigger your network is, the bigger your opportunities are. I have a great relationship with recruiters in Indianapolis, and they call me, they're like, Jon, I know you're probably not looking for this job, but I know you're going to know somebody that is. And I always say yes, because you never know where there's going to be a time where you or somebody else that's in your position comes to me and says, hey, I can't find the right person, but will you help me?
Sure.
And, there's going to come a time where something doesn't work out for me and I need help. I'm going to be able to go back to you and say, Nick, I had a problem. You were able to help me. Look at what we did. So I think those are kind of relationships that another way you can't say no is not be afraid to go and help and network. And we post jobs in our chapter for positions that are open, and being able to talk to a recruiter and say, I think that's another challenge for payroll people. Now I think about it is, how do I sell myself? And I think that's
Definitely.
where you come in
Yeah.
and say, you've got the skill. Why aren't you talking about it? And I think people have a hard time promoting themselves, and I think that's where it's nice to sit, talk to somebody like you, another recruiter, and say, man, you've got a skill set. Why aren't you talking about this? And I think sometimes the hardest judge you have is that person you look at in the mirror.
Sure.
And so I think where you have somebody that can give you an honest opinion or share, hey, this is, you're doing pretty good at this, but if you keep working at this, I think this is where you can go. And I think that's a great thing about a recruiter that can give you an unbiased opinion
Sure.
to tell you where I think you can help and grow in your career.
I think you've articulated that better than I could. But interestingly, I've spoken to loads of global payroll professionals and national payroll professionals about their talent struggles since I've been at the beginning of this conference. And they seem to always come back and say, well, we just get people from LinkedIn, right? But the reality is half the community, half the payroll network aren't on LinkedIn.
Yes.
And this is where networks like this are so strong. And I'm meeting you now, and I know that if I get a position in Indianapolis and needs a global payroll and I can't find that on LinkedIn, I'll pick up the phone and say, Jon, who have you worked with that you could recommend that might be ready for this move?
Yeah, or if I don't know that person, I'll find out somebody that does, and it'll still work that way. That's the great thing about networking and talking to people, is it may not be right for you, and it may not be right for one person but two people away, it might be the right fit.
100%.
And it's a matter of leveraging people and getting to take advantage of opportunities. And I think, even if it's not the right fit for you, like I said, say yes and ask people for help, and you'd be amazed what you can accomplish.
I think face-to-face networking is 10 times more powerful than a LinkedIn search. I think
I think it's wonderful. it's hard for payroll professionals because we know everything about people. We know where they live, what they do, how much they make, but it's so nice to actually meet somebody in person and talk to them face to face, because it's one thing, when you short somebody $20, but you can see their face, how much that's impacted them. It's a whole nother story. So I've always been humble to my roots and said, no matter how much money someone makes, if you short them some, it's going to hurt them and their family. So think about that with what you do. So
I think one of the key things as well, right? I mean, we've met today, but I've been following on LinkedIn. We hadn't met in person. So I would be working, in theory, if I had a position for you, I'd be working off a CV.
Right.
It doesn't sell your personality.
No.
You don't get tone from a CV, right? But now we've met each other. Yeah. Oh my God, it's much easier for me to sell you to a potential client if you were looking for such a standard role now. But this is why also, face-to-face contact, video interviewing, all that kind of stuff, the new tech, we can utilize that. And let's sell personalities. Let's sell people. And payroll's about people too now.
No, it's exactly right. Payroll is people. All you do is touch people. The only thing that you do is pay an expense, and it's for people. It's it's not a commodity. It's not a widget. It's people. Your job is to take care of people, and if you do it well, you can be really successful.
So tell me about what you're most excited about then, John. Let's go back to Congress right now.
Sure.
Your new role, which has got new horizons, which must be incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to? Yeah, tell me about it.
At Congress, looking forward. We're halfway through now, so spending time with people I know, networking, that part's my favorite thing. Meeting people like you that I've talked to LinkedIn, connected to on LinkedIn, but not ever put the face with it. So that part's great. For my job, I think it's just a tremendous opportunity. I've got a really good team. I've got a really great boss, and I feel empowered to do my job. And I don't think that's the best part about having a job, is to be excited about it, is feeling the empowerment and the recognition and the opportunity to do something. I think my job does a really good job of, explaining freedom for you to do. You have a network of things that you can do at your job, but you have the freedom to do it and make a difference. And I like that. I like being able to have the ability to change and drive change. So it's a really good opportunity, and I'm looking forward to digging my feet in and when I get back and making a difference.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I know we're limited on time, and I think that's almost a good way to finish. But I'm going to ask one more question, because I think you're going to be able to answer this with the gusto enthusiasm that we need in the industry, right?
Yep.
I think there's a slight problem we're going to be faced with over the next few years, and I think that's bringing new people into the industry. So it's great. We've got loads of experience in this hall, but there aren't enough millennials coming through and graduates. And how do we sell global payroll to people that aren't decided yet what career direction they want to take? Maybe they're at university, maybe they're at school.
Sure.
How do we encourage them to choose payroll as a career, and what can we do to get more people taking payroll as a career choice? How do we get them involved?
Sure. I think payroll, nobody grows up saying, hey, I want to be a payroll professional. You want to be an astronaut, you want to be a police officer, you want to be a firefighter. But there's, for me, payroll either falls in two avenues. You're part of human resources, or you're part of accounting. And so I've always viewed payroll as kind of the unwanted love child between finance and HR. Nobody wants to own it, but it's still really important. So I think to be excited, if you want a job where you touch everything, involved with everything, can make a difference and have a huge impact on a company, payroll's a really great career. And as far as a millennial goes, the sky's the limit. I remember when I first started 21 years ago, you've never heard of anybody being a payroll director. There's vice presidents of payroll now.
Yeah.
There's chief human resources officers that have come up the ranks being a payroll professional.
Sure.
So, you have an endless opportunity. It's a matter of what you want to do and take ownership of it. I have a young lady that works in my office now. She kind of accidentally ended up in HR, and I told her the other day, meeting with her, I'm like, you can go as far as you want to go. You just have to tell me, and I'll help plan the roadmap with you. But I think it's a great way to get your foot in the door, to learn something that's a skill that's really valued, that no one can take away from you. And there's always a need for it. As long as there's people working, people need to get paid. So it's a really good opportunity, and there's always going to be plenty of jobs to fill those that need filled. So I think it's a great opportunity. I think people should consider it if they're on the fence.
Fantastic. What a great way to close. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've got a little bit of videos dip down here a little bit, not quite sure why. It's been an absolute pleasure, John, to have you with us on the Payroll Podcast today. So thank you ever so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Congress. We've got the party to come. But my name's Nick Day. I'm from James Gray Associates, Global Payroll Recruiters. This is the Payroll Podcast. I look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Cheers, John.
Cheers. Thanks. Have a great day.
been listening to the Payroll Podcast with Nick Day of JGA Recruitment, specialist payroll recruiters. If you would like to feature on a future podcast, please contact us. For a wealth of world-class payroll content, please visit us at jgarecruitment.com. See you next week.